There's something big on the horizon for St. Lucie County's Artificial Reef Program. Find out what it is next on Inside St. Lucie. Hello and welcome to this edition of Inside St. Lucie, SLC TV's monthly government affairs show. I'm your host Eric Gill, Communications Director for St. Lucie County. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about St. Lucie County's Artificial Reef Program with St. Lucie County Commissioner Chris Sadowski and Coastal Resources Coordinator Jim Oppenborn. But before we meet our guest, here's some upcoming events and announcements from the Board of County Commissioners.
St. Lucie County pools are opening for the summer season. The county operates 3 pools, the Ravenswood Pool in Port St. Lucie, Lakewood Park Pool in Fort Pierce, and the Lincoln Park Pool in Fort Pierce. For details about operating hours, prices, and programming, including swim lessons, visit stlucieco.gov/aquatics. The St. Lucie Mets summer season is in full swing at First Data Field, located at 527 Northwest Peacock Boulevard in Port St. Lucie. Games are underway through early September. Don't miss fun promotional nights such as Ladies Night, Bark in the Park, and Dollar Nights. For tickets, call 772-871-2115 or visit stluciemets.com. Join us in the studio for Covering the Bases with the Mets on the third Monday of each month at noon. Featuring the St. Lucie County Chamber and the Mets, you can be part of the live studio audience on the corner of Virginia Avenue and 25th Street and learn more about the important work nonprofits are doing right here in St. Lucie County. Coffee with the Chair, hosted by the St. Lucie County Chamber of Commerce, is held on the 4th Friday of each month in the SLC TV studios in the County Administration Complex on the old Civic Center side, 2300 Virginia Avenue, Fort Pierce. Be sure to stop in for a hot cup of coffee and hear the latest news from the Chamber and the County. A reminder that the Board of County Commissioner meetings are held at 6 p.m. on the first Tuesday and at 9 a.m. on the third Tuesday in the Commission Chambers of the Roger Poitras Administration Annex, 2300 Virginia Avenue, Fort Pierce. The Board typically holds an informal meeting on the second Tuesday at 9 a.m. in Conference Room 3.
Now, for more information about all St. Lucie County Commission meetings, workshops, and events, be sure to visit our website at stlucieco.gov and click on our comprehensive calendar. And if you'd like to be added to our press release distribution list, send us an email at slctv@stlucieco.org. We also hope you'll follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're going to take a quick break. Before we do, we're going to check in with the latest economic development stats with another St. Lucie Works.
The bed tax revenue dropped after a year of consecutive monthly increases. St. Lucie County's bed tax dropped by 14% in April compared to the previous year. However, revenue overall still remains above average. Overall building activity increased in April, jumping by 5.5% compared to March, with more than 1,100 permits submitted. Revenue for that time frame was more than $222,000. The housing market remains steady. According to the Florida Realtors Association, the average median home sale price in April was nearly $219,000, up more than 9% from last year, while condos decreased in value by nearly 2%, with the median price at roughly $190,000. St. Lucie County's unemployment rate dropped slightly in April to 4.1% compared to March's 4.6% and down from last April's 4.7%. Statewide, the unemployment rate remained the same at 3.9%. There were 2,800 more jobs on the Treasure Coast compared to last year, with the largest gains in leisure and hospitality with 800, retail with 800, and government with 500. If you work for a local business looking for skilled or trained labor, be sure to contact the staff at CareerSource as they can assist your company with its recruitment and training needs. And if you're an individual looking for a job, they can help you as well. Visit the CareerSource online at careersourcerc.com or call 1-855-4U2-HIRE.
Welcome back to Inside St. Lucie. I'm your host, Eric Gill, and I'm joined by St. Lucie County Commissioner Chris Sadowski. Commissioner, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having
Jim
us.
Oppenborn. Jim
Good to
is
be
our
here.
County Coastal Resources Coordinator, I think. At
Yes.
least the title is this month.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like mine, it changes usually every few months to keep things fresh. But
Well.
thank you both for coming on. We're going to talk about the Artificial Reef Program and water quality projects, which I know are something that, Commissioner, are near and dear to your heart.
Sure.
And you're a former dive instructor and dive business. You've been out and dive, and Jim has too. But I know you and I have even had the pleasure of bringing up outdoor writers from Miami to dive some of our reefs.
That's right. And, my time started in the early 80s when I learned how to scuba dive, and then in the 90s became a dive instructor. And so impressed with the business, I actually bought a dive resort and started teaching and living in the Keys and diving the Bib and the Duane. Those are, for those of you at home, you probably really know about those dive sites, and they're really spectacular. And then my last mission to raise money to deploy a ship was the Spiegel Grove. And that took, we thought it was going to take 2 or 3 years, but it was a really, really, really big ship. And so we spent probably close to 10 years raising money to actually get her properly cleaned and then deployed. The interesting part about that deployment was she went down and she tipped over on her side.
Yep.
And
But then got righted, right?
about a year later, Hurricane Dennis came through and sat her right back up on her hull, and she looks pretty as ever.
Yeah.
And I just had some reports this week that they were diving it, and the proliferation of corals in the reef are just spectacular.
Yeah. We'll get into that a little later. Jim, let's talk about you and your history here with St. Lucie County. You've been here almost 15 years. You've been here about as long as I have,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? And in that time, you've really, the Artificial Reef Program had been dormant for a number of years, right? Our
That's correct.
permits,
Yes.
and it was started by some sport fishing clubs. It was kind of the history of it, and then we brought in a coordinator to help revive the program.
Yeah, there was a big project, long history of artificial reefs back in the 80s and 90s, but it had gone dormant for a while. When I got back here, got up here, I had to renew the permits and hit the ground running. And,
Yeah.
it's
And you
very,
have, I
very
think
good.
you put in more than 50 reefs? Right?
Yes, yes.
And
Exactly.
they're all not Spiegel Grove size. I don't want to
No.
confuse it.
No, the Voici Bernadetti is going to be the largest vessel that the largest reef pier that we've done. We've done everything up to 195-foot barges, 1,500-ton concrete reefs. But this is by far the largest thing we've done since the Molphin.
For those that don't know, the Voici, is that how you pronounce it? Voici?
Yeah, yes.
The Bernadette. You can see
The
it docked
Bernadette, yes.
right there outside the St. Lucie County Aquarium and the Regional History Center at Museum Point Park. If you look north when you're going over the bridge, you'll see that large green vessel. Like you said, it's 180 foot long, but it's also pretty tall too, so it'll create some great profile.
Yes, it's including the masts. It probably, we haven't done a survey yet, but it probably has 100 foot of profile from the keel to the top of the mast. So it'll be very, very good for any number of divers, for any number of different
Certifications there.
certification
Yeah.
levels, and it'll be good, obviously, for the anglers as well.
Yeah. And like you said, and the history of most of our reefs have been kind of concrete and steel rubble piles or barges, and we load them up and sink them down, but they still create huge habitat, not just for some of the fish species, but Commissioners, you mentioned, there's corals, and there's even evidence that the deep water oculina coral can attach to this stuff, because it needs a hard surface for the corals to grow, correct?
Correct.
Yes,
Yep.
it does. And the interesting thing is we have, on all of our artificial reefs over the last 13 years, we've documented a number of species, probably 130 different fish species, period. I know Harbor Branch is working on something right now. They've documented a large toothy creature. We've had several different species of sharks located on our artificial reefs as well. So from my perspective, these reefs are actually providing an ecological benefit to the area, not just an area for people to fish and dive.
Yeah, which is what my concern is.
Oh yeah. Well, you go from the benthic population to the apex predator. The toothy predator.
I like to
That's
think of
pretty
myself as an apex predator.
Absolutely, yeah. So we talked about the Molphin, and went down in 1989, and it has been great for our reefs and for our fisheries. But I'm going to take you back on a little story that you may not even know. Bob Davis was a tax collector here at St. Lucie County for many, many years. And his father actually was he reached out to me when we started some of these conversations and said that his father was actually one of the first to create an artificial reef with a vehicle. And so it was like, I said, I'm not sure that the same thing holds true today, that we could do that, because we spend a great deal of time and effort making sure we take care of the environmental concerns of anything that we put into our oceans, because that is first and foremost what we're trying to accomplish, and making sure that everything is environmentally sound, but actually creates that environment that will help our fisheries.
Yeah, and that's something I've seen on social media, and even my wife and I sometimes argue. She says, "I feel like you're just putting garbage in the ocean." I'm like, we're not putting garbage in the ocean. You know, it does spare concrete and steel from going to landfill, but it I take, for example, was it 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago this September, with a tug Kathleen. We sunk this tugboat in 150 feet of water. Was it 80-foot tug, roughly 70-foot tug?
Yeah, 70,
and
75.
within 3 weeks, our consultants went down, and that tug was already covered in juvenile bait fish. There was a sea turtle on it. There was a Goliath grouper in the hull. There was already, unfortunately, lionfish on it. But, so these things already, within 3 weeks, can become habitat for fish.
And it's very good. You have the fish, obviously, and you have the recreational things, but we have something called shelf edge or mesophotic reefs, which are deep water reefs. They don't have very much sunlight, so you don't get the tropical coral effect like you would down south.
True.
But there's growing evidence that there are a large number of fish species that utilize these deep reefs for actually replenishing themselves and inhabiting those deeper areas. They actually go between here and the Bahamas. They, in certain cases, they spawn offshore, and then they come in and inhabit the Indian River Lagoon as juveniles, and they migrate in and out of the Fort Pierce Inlet all the time. So,
and which Jim makes a good point, is he spends a lot of time recreating our oyster bed restoration programs, and we do shore protection, those types of things. And we've really paid attention to how it all fits together. The most diverse national estuary in North America, and our offshore fisheries. It all works together. And Jim works very hard with his volunteers. And thank you to all the volunteers out there who help bag these oyster bags and then deploy them, because they are so important to our environment. And then furthermore, again, thank you to volunteers for our cleanups, because there's a Treasure Coast Waterway cleanup coming up this month, so hopefully you'll participate in that.
Yeah. And it's a good point, because these reefs are strategically, like you said, they're permitted through the state, but they're strategically placed so that they create corridors for wildlife to move from one reef to the other. And I remember a few years ago I was talking to a researcher. They put down 4 artificial reefs, and 2 were published, and 2 were not. They didn't publish the numbers, and they really didn't find a difference in, because that was the other thing some people say, well, you put these out there and then they just get attacked by fishermen and spear fishermen. But they looked at these 2 different, or 2 sets of reefs, and they really didn't see a difference in the amount of fish species on the published versus the non-published reefs. And he also found that Goliath grouper, which are a protected species in Florida, love the artificial reefs, especially the large culverts, because these things get so large. They're 600-800 pounds, or bigger than us. That natural reefs kind of sand in, and the holes close up and sand in. But when you have these huge culverts stacked up, they're not going to sand in. And I remember the writer from Miami was amazed with the Goliath groupers that swim right up to you, and they have no fear, and they slap their plates. It's like a boom, like they're barking at you.
Well, when we're diving for lobster, you get into some of those holes with the overhang, and whether it's an artificial reef or general reef, but they'll start barking at you, and they'll say, "Get away from my lobster." So,
but it is a nice benefit to have. You talked about too, not just protecting the environment, but there's an economic impact to it too. I mean, Florida Wildlife's Fish and Wildlife had put out a study about the economic impact.
Right, and I brought some of this with me, and not only did they do it, did IFAS, Florida IFAS did some reports as well. And in Southwest Florida, southeastern Florida, in the 90 million range on either coast. So you're looking at $180 million in value from an economic standpoint, plus the jobs that go with that. Sure. And one of the conversations I've had with the administrator is, when we do these types of things, there's one cost. The one cost is doing what we do best here, and that's to protect the environment. But once that vessel goes into the ocean floor, we don't have to maintain it. We don't have to manage it. We don't have to staff it. And it continues to bring money back into our economics every single solitary day. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and one IFAS study estimated that at least in the Panhandle, for every dollar spent on artificial reefing, you generated $130 in revenues.
Wow.
So it can be a very, very big economic impact.
Yeah, fuel isn't cheap for boats, especially if you fill up on the water. But let's talk too about the Bernadette. The history of that ship. We recently acquired it from Customs.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection down in the Miami River. And this is actually the second time they've seized the vessel. And they don't want to see it again.
So at least not as an active cargo drug
we
hauler.
promised them that there's no way, shape, or form will they see this thing floating on top of the water. I just received an email from Hannelore Fuhrmann from Germany. Actually, she was a previous owner. She was horrified that it had been used and seized, but she's given the blessing for the vessel to be an artificial reef now.
So now we have the challenge, and you mentioned volunteers. There's some volunteers helping raise funds to clean this, prep it for artificial reef.
Yes, and that's going to be very, very important. Just yesterday, as a matter of fact, we had our first fundraiser. I don't even know. It's been so I fell asleep after. Yeah. I don't know
Sleep
how much
deprived.
money we raised, but they did a good job. It was a jazz music festival / antique car show to raise money for the Bernadette. We've already had 2 people donate, Bob Herbst Jr. and Tris Colquitt. They've already donated funds, and I believe I can't remember what commissioner it was that pledged a plaque for his father.
Right. It was Father's Day when this event occurred, and so I was looking back through some pictures, and my father was a staff sergeant in World War II and Korea, and I thought, what a way to give him some honor and actually place a certified plaque on the vessel with his name and his status as a sergeant, staff sergeant, and then where he was in World War II and Korea.
That's an awesome tribute.
Yeah, I think it's a minimal cost, $500, and so I think I'm going to do more for other family members and
My
encourage
dad
others
was
to
in the
do.
Navy, so I'll have to consider that too. And I keep saying I'm going to get a brick at the SEAL Museum too, but I always forget to go online and do that. But I'll do that too.
But we're talking about the fundraising side of this, and for the folks at home, understand that this is not something that the county is funding. This is all through Jim's program from the permitting and so on,
Sure.
so that we make sure that it's legal and properly done. But Jim and I and many others who stepped up to volunteer to raise the money. So if you're at home and you'd like to contribute to this, there's naming rights available. You can donate. There'll be opportunities for these types of plaques, and then we're going to move forward with some of the items off the vessel that will be not donated but auctioned off.
Oh, nice.
And I already understand that I've made a bid already, starting on the ship's wheel.
Oh, nice.
but I was told that you better step aside because you got to go a little higher.
A little higher.
So.
And somebody had actually gave a good fundraising idea too to me about having a dive boat be that once it goes down, like a month after it goes down, people can auction to be the first to go out and dive it once, after our consultants go down and check it, be the first group of people to go out and dive it.
Wow.
I technically want to be the first because I want to mount the GoPros and do like we did with the Tugly. So technically I want to be the first.
All right.
I got dibs on that. I'll make a donation for that.
All right.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll have some footage that you're going to show for some of the things we've got going, because when we did do the Kathleen, that video was just terrific.
Award winning.
And you guys did exactly, and you guys did an awesome job
Thank
with getting those cameras on there, and then the collection, and then again the follow up was just amazing.
I was disappointed. And I should, rest in peace, Kerry Dillon, but he didn't invite me out for the follow-up dive. I was a little disappointed. He didn't take me out for that post-dive, but we'll certainly do that with this time around. I'll make sure I get on it. Because even at a ship that height, even if we had to sink it in 150 feet of water, like you said, you're probably still going to have profile at 60, 80 feet, which is most range for most divers.
Well, the 2 factors to consider is, one, we have by permit, we have to have a distance of 50 feet between the surface of the water and the top of the reef, and it looks like there's probably about 100 foot of profile to the reef itself. Then I have to do a stability analysis on the vessel and see if she's going to be stable for a 50-year storm at that depth.
Yeah.
Everything else I've put down has always been stable under
Sure.
150 feet. So
Well, I'll give you an idea. I talked about the bib and the Duane when we opened up, and the Duane itself is 130 feet to the bow, and then when you get to the actual deck, it's about 100 feet. So it's open for open water divers, advanced open water divers, and technical divers. And that's where the Mullifin would be in the technical diving range.
Sure.
But there are those who follow wrecks around the world, and it is such a huge revenue base. I mean, it's in the billions of dollars for wreck divers.
Yeah. And it isn't just even diving. As we said before, commercial fishermen, we put these numbers out there. As a diver, we pulled up some of the rubble spots, and you'll see 2 or 3 boats out there hook and line fishing them. So we have to go hit another one and then come back later. Hopefully they're gone. But it's been a while.
At one point, I want to go back to the actually proliferation of corals. It was the Tug Leslie Lee, right?
That's correct.
So Tug Leslie Lee went down about 5 years ago now, maybe 6.
2000, no, longer than that. Almost 8 years maybe.
Okay, so it's been a while, but as part of the follow-up reports and the reporting thereof, it was found. What was found?
Oculina coral.
Oculina coral. It's actually been devastated along our coast, and to find that in an artificial reef is pretty spectacular. And we owe it all to Jim and those who contributed to the Tug Leslie Lee.
Yeah, and it was as you mentioned, Kerry Dillon. He was the first one that went out 365 days to the day after it was deployed. There's a small coral head, if you will, of Oculina varicosa coral, and he went back another 365 days later on the second annual monitoring, and it actually had grown, and there were small little pocks of corals all over the vessel.
Wow.
So we're really hoping that this area is going to be very, very good to help regenerate Oculina corals in the area.
Well, gentlemen, we're running short on time. Is there anything we didn't get to mention? The folks at home that want to learn more about the Artificial Reef Program, we have a website set up at stlucyco.gov/reefs, and you can find information on there about not just the Bernadetti, but the locations, GPS, and there's videos up there that we've talked about. So
There's also a Facebook page for the Bernadette,
Yep.
and it's well done, and some of the things that are coming out of this are going to be awesome.
yeah,
So
we're embedding that
keep
in
an
the
eye.
webpage,
Okay,
so it'll be
fabulous.
up there.
Excellent.
Anything else? Joe?
If you want to be part of the Artificial Reef Program or any other,
Or the oyster program?
the oyster program or Moores Creek restoration or water quality in St. Lucie County, you can email me. My email is oppenborn, OPPENBORNJ @stlucyco.org.
Great. Well, thank you both for taking the time. Commissioner,
Thanks.
once we get this
Thanks
thing
for having
synced, you're going to take me out there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. Before we do, we're going to check in with another project at one of our libraries.
Patrons of the Susan Broome Kilmer Branch Library, formerly known as the Fort Pierce Branch, may have noticed that the nearly 20-year-old building recently had an internal facelift this spring. Using state aid funds, facilities maintenance improvement funds, and internal staff labor, the first floor of the library received new carpeting and tile, a fresh coat of paint on the walls and trim, refurbished upholstered chairs, as well as a custom-built circulation desk that provides easier access for the public to engage with the library staff. Additional work was done in the young adult and children's area using a fun chalkboard and dry erase Formica on the ends of the bookcases. Lighting was also replaced, while windows were cleaned and pressure washed to brighten up the facility. It was the first time that the buildings received a major remodeling since the hurricanes of 2004 damaged the carpets. The $71,000 project began in April 2018 and was completed by the end of May on time and under budget. Facilities project manager Joe Turner oversaw the work with design coordinator Danielle Biglin, while the flooring was provided by Carpets Etc. and painting was completed by Chivas. All of the furniture, including the circulation desk, computer stations, and bookcases, was built by the county's facility team of Phil Dittmer, John Nielsen, and Robert Yarden. Additionally, the county's facilities construction crew cut down the existing drop in the ceiling over the circulation desk and finished it off. Staff even let the public play a part in the redesign, painting 8 different color samples on the wall behind the circulation desk, letting library users vote on the new accent color. This remodeling project provides a more customer-friendly design around the circulation desk, which allows for less congestion and better flow of foot traffic. Furthermore, the stand-up desks and computer stations in the young adult area and smaller desks and computer stations in the children's area were specifically designed for the younger customer in mind. Cutting down the drop ceiling over the circulation desk also created the illusion of more space. If you haven't had a chance to visit the newly remodeled Kilmore Branch Library, stop by at 101 Melody Lane in downtown Fort Pierce. And be sure to sign your children up for the library's Summer Reading Challenge at stlucieco.gov/library.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Inside St. Lucie, and we hope you'll tune in again next month. If you have topics or subjects you'd like to see covered here on the program relating to St. Lucie County government, give us a call at 772-462-1791 or send us an email at slctv@stlucieco.org. And if you'd like to see previously aired episodes of this or other SLC TV programs, visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/stluciegov. I'm your host, Eric Gill. For myself and the staff, thanks for watching.